Hello, my name is Michael Garrick, and this is the PoppinCulture podcast. My guest today is Christian Williams. He's a hilarious comedian, and he's also an improv actor at Tomorrow Quest Theaters. If you're in the Columbia, South Carolina area, or even North Carolina area, make sure you come out and check him out. Very funny fella. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast, man.
No, man, it's no problem. It's. I've been waiting to do a podcast, so
Nice.
this was a lot of fun.
Well, I'm
Excited.
honored to be your first one, man. So here we like to talk about people succeeding. So a lot of people talk about bombing, but I would love to know, when was the first time you killed, and how did it feel?
So the first time I killed on stage, it was a night at Art Bar, and for those, it's hard to know, but like Art Bar is pretty simple setup, but I was doing really well. It's the first time I really remember succeeding because then people were coming in from the bar. So like the laughter was bringing more people into the room. And so like at the end of my set, there were a whole bunch of people in the room. And it was a night where it was super crowded and that felt great. And then I did well enough that Patrick let me actually go twice on the same night. So then I got to go on again later, and do another 5 was like amazing. So like that was the first time I really remember succeeding in comedy.
Man, that's killing when they say, "Hey, go back up there." Like that's,
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was one of those times where like, like you get a crowd that's your kind of crowd, and my kind of crowd is like, like I would say 20 to 24. That age group is really solid for me. So, just having that group of people in there, and it was a night where there were a lot of people in there anyway, so that felt really good to be able to do that.
Nice. The second time you went up, was the energy the same, or did it feel different?
So the difference in the second, and this is when I've learned a lot about comedy. So one of the big things in stand up, especially like the more stand up specials I watch, you realize that it's not laughter every minute, but they've earned the respect to hear you talk. And so the second time I went up, I was able to do some of my longer bits and longer jokes, and people were already paying attention through the whole thing because I already knew I was funny from the first 5, and that makes your jokes work that much better. It's like that earned respect. Like when you go see whatever comedian you're going to see, when you pay to go see them do an hour, you know that they're funny, so you sit there and wait. Well, most of the time at an open mic, you have to do like your best jokes and your shortest jokes a lot of times because nobody, you know what I'm saying? You have to make the crowd pay attention to you. People want to look at their phones. Like people are like, who in the heck is this? They don't know who you are. Compared to like that second time I went up, like everybody had that respect in the room already of being like, oh, like let's listen, like he's funny. So then that worked out really well for me.
Nice. It's fun that you talked about the respect. A lot of comedians, I don't know about like improv people, but for comedians, they kind of don't respect improv. Do you know why that's a thing? Or
I think a lot of people don't respect improv because they think it's very like easy, which like the base level of it is pretty easy of like making something up on the spot. But it's a lot more difficult than people understand because like for example, like improv is what helps me get through. When I first started comedy, helped me get through a lot of silences because improv, you're continuously having to go. Like if me and you are doing a scene and I say a joke that's not funny and the crowd is quiet, like I can't stop. Like in stand up, like people stop and like I have to keep doing the scene with you. You have to figure out how to work through things. You have to keep in mind the story that's going on. You have to keep in mind with the plot. So all of that makes you have to work a lot harder. While I think a lot of people just go and they see like, like if you go to like in high school and you see people do improv, or if you go to like a silly little improv show, you think like, oh, these people are just being super goofy and stuff on stage. But a lot of the memorization and like realizing how to push the story forward is hard. And you can usually, it's one of those things that you can really tell the difference between someone who's really good at it and someone who's really like just trying to be goofy or whatever. Like it's one of the things, the more you see it, you can see the difference. Probably more than in stand-up.
Okay. I haven't done improv, but I did do a murder mystery theater show.
Okay.
I was very poor at this time, and I commend people that do it. But it was a part where I guess one of the actors forgot his lines, and I guess everybody that was acting with me, they knew that person forgot their line, so they just were so organic in their improv to get the line back. And I just remember somebody said something to me, and I literally was like, I was like, this isn't what I was,
Yeah.
So I literally just said my line, and it did not make sense. But luckily, we were able to get back. They were so good, so talented actors that they got everything back on track.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that like people just think of it with comedy, but like improv is something that like once you learn how to do it, it's something that you can use in whatever. Like if I needed to go, like if I acted or when I've shot videos where there are a little bit of acting and stuff like that, because there are times where like if you do any kind of acting, real like dramatic or whatever, somebody could forget their line. Like if we're having a fight, like let's say we're doing a scene where we're having a fight and you forget to say the line about what we're fighting about, like improv wise I would like almost hint at why I would be angry at you, and then that's like you have to like say things to trigger your person to get it in their heads. And it teaches you a lot, and it makes me feel more comfortable on stage doing stand up.
Okay.
Because like if I say the majority of the time, unless I say a punchline wrong, but if I say anything else wrong, I can flow through my joke. I can still get to what I want the punchline to be because I'm used to like not having my words set a certain way.
I got you. Yeah, that just comes with like repetition of doing your joke. Where you're like, yeah, I can substitute something else and get back to my punchline.
Yeah,
nice.
And it's hard for a lot of people because you'll see a lot of people who are really funny and they may stumble on a joke that's really good of theirs. And I struggle with this in comedy for a little bit, but then you have to learn how to work through it. Like, and once you figure out that part about it, then that is what impresses a lot of. Because, like if you go to an open mic, for those of you who've never been, an open mic, it's like 50% comedians. And so they've heard your jokes 1,000 times. But if you improv and like, there are little bits of my jokes that I change pretty consistently. And then that's one of the things when you hear the comedians laugh, you know that you have something, right? Like if I can say a joke a little bit differently, but continue to make the people who've heard the joke 15 times, like even like 3 times that week, and they still laugh at it. A, it's a really funny joke. And B, you can kind of put anything in there and it kind of works.
Nice. That's true. And like I say, guys, make sure you like if you haven't been to open mic, if you've just been like very professional shows, make sure you check out open mic. You'll see what the future contains and how jokes sound before they're funny.
Yeah, I would tell most of the people like the open mics to me are a lot of times more enjoyable than the shows because you get if you go to any open mic, for a lot of times you get a lot of variety. And not only do you get variety, you get to see, it's like getting to watch what becomes the final product. So like, it's a lot more, it's not even more rewarding for me. It's a lot of times rewarding. Like I go to a lot of the shows around Columbia. So like I could see you work on a joke from beginning to end and then go see you do it and kill at a show. And like, I've gotten to see the whole process of it. And I think that like, if you are a fan of comedy, open mics are a place to go. Cause that's when you get to see someone build into something instead of just watching some guy and be like, that guy's really funny. Like for 10 minutes, it's like, no, that guy's like always really funny. Like you can go see him anytime and he'll be funny.
Yeah. More than anything, I just enjoy when it comes to most open mics, you ever been to a job and you're like, man, nobody here likes anybody? Mm-hmm. With open mics, you'll see that most comedians just like, yeah, we all want each other to succeed. Like nobody's here to step on anybody's toes.
Yeah, it is a good thing of like, it's a lot of thing of like, I want you to do well because like you make the crowd work for me. Like it's one of those things that like you're working together, especially like, as long as your subject matter is different than most people. If you're a very generic person and you have very generic jokes, that could end up coming to bite you. But like, it's one of those things that at the beginning, it made me kind of nervous, especially like if the person right before me, like when I first started out, the person right before me did really well. I would be a little nervous, but then I stopped being nervous because I was just like, oh, that doesn't matter. Like I'm going to say of 5 funny different minutes of different material and the crowd is already in a good mood when I'm going on stage. Which is very like, it makes you excited because like there are nights where, depending on where you go, like if you're 4th, 5th, 6th, you can tell it's going to be a good night because the third comedian's killing and everyone's flowing with that energy. And by the time it gets to you, you're just going to be able to go on stage and not be worried compared to like, if you go and nobody's doing well and you go into a dead room, then like, yeah, you do, even if you do pretty well, you're basically just warming up the crowd for the next person. Which is good, but sometimes kind of sucks because you're like, I wish the guys before me had been a little bit better.
Have you ever been to open mic where you're like, I don't think this crowd came for comedy?
Yeah. That's part of the fun of doing a lot of brewery shows. A lot of random pop-up open mics. There are times where you can tell that people aren't there to laugh. But I think that makes you a lot stronger. So like I've been thinking about moving recently to a city that has more of a comedy scene. But I think that it will be one of those things that, because like for example, when our bar had a really big crowd, that crowd was there to see comedy. While a lot of times at an open mic at a restaurant or a bar, like a couple people are there to see stand up, but then they're really just there to see their friends, so they're not interested in what you're saying. While like I think a lot of times if you grow up doing comedy in a city like Columbia, where it's not really a comedy city, and then you go to, I don't know this for sure, but this is what I'm assuming. When I go to see a crowd that is like in Atlanta or wherever, and they're like all there to see comedy, like they love comedy, they want to laugh, then you're going to destroy. Like it almost makes you stronger because you're used to performing in front of people who don't give a shit, like people on their phones, and then you get them to laugh, while people who are attentive and already ready to go, they're going to like enjoy it that much more.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I think we nailed that pretty well. So the topic that we're going to talk about is TV romances. You chose the topic. Any particular reason?
I think I chose this topic because to me, pop culture wise, it's probably the most interesting thing to me. I tell people that the idea of love is so, it's not forced, but it's so ingrained in everything you see in culture, but especially in TV. And it doesn't matter the genre of the TV show, or a lot of times movies, but especially TV shows, it doesn't matter. There's a B story that involves some kind of romantic interest. And it's a thing to where like, almost as a kid, whenever you're growing up, like you have this idea of like, well, I'm supposed to have like a girlfriend, or I'm supposed to be dating someone, going along with everything else that's happening. And I think the more I realized it, you can see in TV shows when it's not organic and it's forced because they feel like they have to have love in it, and it can junk up a lot of stuff, or a lot of times it can ruin a really good TV show that has a plot about something else, because it's like, okay, so now we're spending another 15 minutes on these people dating. Like, this is not like what I originally got into this show for. You know, like you could watch a TV show about zombies and you're like, I don't really care if these two people are like, that's not like, I watched this for the thriller part of the show, not for these two people's relationship.
Man, okay, you nailed a few of my points right there. I do enjoy the fact that unlike movies where you get an hour to 30 to maybe 2 hours to see a relationship, in TV shows you can flush out a whole relationship. You can flush out a relationship, break up, and then start a whole new relationship.
Yeah.
So I do like that aspect of the TV shows. I thought we would start first to talk about sitcoms.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite sitcom relationship or relationships?
Yeah. So my favorite, I guess I have two favorite sitcoms. So my favorite sitcom that most people don't know about is a TV show called Psych.
Yeah, I love Psych.
Yeah, it's mid-tier popular, but I think the easiest one to talk about that I like a lot is The Office.
Yeah.
And The Office is a sitcom that's basically packed with romances. Like everywhere you see it, it's packed with it. And it's funny because like it's become like everyone idealizes Jim and Pam's relationship. Like it's like they're like built through all these seasons. And if you look at it, like they have a pretty shitty relationship. Like it's not
healthy at all.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that like as a kid, like as a teenage boy when I was watching it, I'd be like, TV sitcoms especially teach you like grand romantic gestures are the way to go. If you want to win some girl over, you should do some big gesture and surprise her with something, and that like doesn't work out the majority of the time because you're not communicating with that person.
It looks very stalkerish in real life.
Yeah. And it's funny to me because I say like my favorite relationship in that show is more Dwight and Angela, or I love Michael and Holly as well. And I love Michael and Holly because it's awkward. It's Michael and Holly is one of probably, it's definitely top 5 TV relationships ever for me because he's so awkward, but he's more of the natural. They make it comedic, but he's more of how a natural person acts. Like you don't know what to do when you like somebody. Half the time he's like, I should go ask her out right now. And it's like, you just met the girl, but like, that's how you feel in real life. It's not like your gym and you sit there and wait and play this little game. Like a lot of times you don't know what to do. You make a really dumb mistake. You say something really dumb, especially like if you work with a person that you're interested in, you're going to say something really stupid. And I think that like when they finally end up working out, it's more beautiful to me than Jim and Pam. Like when he does the big proposal and the fire hydrant goes off, because they seem like two people who would date in real life compared to like, I'm like, Jim and Pam have, their relationship seems boring after they get together for most of it until they have kids, because you're like, okay, like they really don't share a lot of personality traits and things in common.
Yeah. I don't remember now because we're both in our 20s, but when you were younger in your teenage years, how'd you feel about those TV romances?
So the killer in TV romances when you're a teen is this idea that you can just somehow win your way out of the friend zone. I think that like that was like the perfect example to me is like Ron Stoppable in Kim Possible. Like he like loves this, and he's so, and like when it ends, like I remember, like I was probably around, I was in my teenage years when that show ends, and he finally asks her to prom, and she's like, "I've liked you." That never happens. Like if you if you ever think you're going to just like be friends with someone for 5 years and then like win over a person that's way out of your league, that's not. It's like a 1 in 10 chance.
No. To me, to compare that story was Corey and Topanga.
Yeah.
I don't know if you just remember. I can't remember the episode like clearly through, but it's just one episode where they say all this dialogue, and I'm like, no, they have never liked each other. They've never looked at each other like, yeah, we need to be with each other. That was never a part of the early story. Like, I don't. But, eventually it worked out in the long run, But I was like, no one ever looked at each other like, oh, yeah, I want to be with Corey. That didn't make...
Yeah, like the thing about, like, I guess Corey is also a great example because, like, there are several times where he dates people in the show, and I'm like, Corey is, like... And he's not even, like, in the sense, like, the cute nerdy. Like, he's just very awkward. Like, he's just, like, every white guy I feel like I went to high school with who's just, like, very awkward, kind of funny if you know him for a while. But then I'm like, he keeps getting, like, very attractive girls to date him. And I was like, this makes zero sense. While Sean, who, like, when Sean, like, anybody like Sean, you're like, that makes sense. Like,
yeah. It was more like... And I agree, he's not like the most handsome guy. Like the whole time, I imagine him being like, "Hey, I'm Ben Savage's brother."
Yeah, like I think it's one of those things of like, because at one point he dates the bully's sister, and I'm like, there's just no way. There's no way a girl this attractive with this kind of personality would ever want to date a dude like this unless it was a joke, like unless she was just trolling. And it's just so funny to me. Like I think that's why they did it, because it ends up riding off very funny. But like it's one of those things that like you look at it and you're like, this isn't realistic. It gives hope to a lot of kids that, especially boys, that it's just never going to happen.
Yes. And since we're on the sitcom part, I just wanted to talk about the evolution a little bit. I feel like after doing a little research, I'm so glad TV romances are better than like the 1950s TV romances. Like we're not slapping women or
yeah. I'm glad that the progression has come where it is, to where I mean, like even in Boy Meets World, like Topanga is a little bit more of the aggressor.
Yeah.
While like for years before that, it was like, yeah, this guy's just gonna ask out this girl, and like basically they're gonna say yes for whatever reason. I am happy at the progress we've made, because a lot of romances now, like it's in a lot of modern TV shows, like it's the woman can be the, like, you know what I'm saying, like it's changed from the dynamic that it was before.
Yeah. Also, the biggest change was nobody sleeps in 2 separate beds for some reason.
Yeah, no,
like that. I thought that was hilarious.
No, it's I've been watching a lot of Three's Company, which is a pretty funny sitcom, but like it's interesting to me, like even some of the things that they say, like the things that like they got away with saying then about women are just like, I'm like, this is so bold. But then I have to think like, oh wait, that's just a different, I'm like, you couldn't even think about saying something like that in any kind of way, shape, or form now. Like that just doesn't work. That
was on their Friday night lineup. Like that was just normal TV.
Yeah.
But when it comes to TV romances, I think we should talk about the OG. I think we should discuss soap operas.
Okay. All right. So soap operas are more, in my mind, are more shows that are, like in soap operas, it makes sense to me because it's like almost like those TV shows have to be based off of romances. Like the modern day soap opera to me is K-dramas, the Korean dramas. Like they are TV shows that are so big into it. And it's funny. I worked for a semester. I lived with like Asian kids in a boarding home. Like I was like their assistant house parent. And all of the kids at dinner watch the same and I mean, it doesn't matter if you're the athletic boy, if you're the kid who loves video, like all of them keep up with this TV show. And it's so funny because I'm just like, this is just like the cheesiest thing ever. A lot of times when you watch them of like, okay, so this person has been in love with this person this whole time. Oh, wait, there's some crazy thing where like she needs a kidney and she's dying all of a sudden. And then like she dies, but then like a couple seasons later, you meet someone who kind of looks like her. And it turns out like it's her long lost family member, whatever. Like that, in my mind, is so like overly dramatic, but it catches a lot of people. Like there's a reason that like, I forget which one it is. It's not General Hospital.
One Life to Live.
Yeah, one of them is like the longest running TV. Like some of the soap operas have been going on since radio.
I think it's One Life to Live.
Yeah, and it's crazy because it's like you've existed that long, but like most of your plot is just very loose. It's not like you've done at that point you've done everything you could do.
You do run into that the Simpsons thing where like what new idea do we have that we haven't done in 30 seasons, you know?
Yeah. And especially when you're basing it on love, like you've had to tackle almost every kind of dynamic of relationship. I mean, you know, because once you got past the 80s and the 90s, then you had to do like interracial relationships. So you've hit every dynamic you can hit in relationships. Basically, you have to wait, I guess, for something new to come up.
They're waiting for the robots. Yeah.
Yeah.
My personal, I work in a nursing home, and my biggest thing was I've had patients refuse like pain medicine because they don't want to fall asleep during their soap operas. Like that's how much they are addicted to it. So that's my only personal experience. But some of them they'll get you for like 3 episodes, but then I'll be like, no, this plot doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah, it's crazy how like, so my mom used to love Desperate Housewives, and it came on Sundays at 9:00. And I know that for however long it was on, it was the wildest thing of like, you could not, from 8:50 until whenever it went off, you could not get in touch with my mom. Like she would just not, she doesn't pick up her phone normally, but like Sundays from 8:50 to when Desperate Housewives went off, you're not getting in touch with her. I don't think she ever missed a live episode, but like, and like, it would be one of those things where like I would go to sleep around that time anyway when I was a kid, but I could hear it. And then like it would be half the time where like something would pique my interest, but then like it's like one of those things I'm just like, this is stupid. Like eventually, like the older I got, I would hear it in the other room, like this is just like dumb, whatever is happening.
Yeah, it definitely repeated itself a few times.
Yeah,
I think I watched maybe half of the first season. My mom was a fan of it too. But then we go to the next step, and this is kind of bottom of the barrel, but you know I think we should discuss it. Reality TV.
So. Reality TV is actually probably it may be my favorite type of television.
Sorry. I should have reworded that. Okay.
No, it's fine. I understand that it's trashy, but that's why I love it. Like MTV made a living off of dating shows.
Yes.
Room Raiders, where someone's searching your room, the next bus.
Yeah.
All of these things that are so dumb, but like, it's so like part of the thing, and I think reality TV shows able to do it the best with their dating shows, because part of the thing is like, love is the simplest thing for people to relate to. Outside of friendships and TV, love is the simplest thing for people to relate to. And so when you make these whatever dating shows, everyone can sit there and watch it, because like, even if you're uninterested, like if you're watching with me and you're uninterested and I go like, yeah, but I would never date that girl and that's the person you would date, you immediately go like, no, bro, like I would, like that, she's obviously, you know what I'm saying? And they create this thing of like that's what like, as much as I don't like it, if I ever watch it when it's on, it's hard not to watch The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, because you're sitting there in your head and you're going, nah, I'm sending this person home, I'm eliminating this person, this is who I would keep. And that's like part of the fun of it, is a lot of people watch shows like that just to be like they're not interested in the love or the romance. I'm trying to figure out who he's picking in the first night.
But then we have one that it was the opposite. You remember Flavor of Love?
Yeah, so that one, but like that one is still like, I mean, it's wild that any person would think that they would love Flavor Flav, but like I still remember New York spitting on pumpkin. Like there are moments of that TV show that are so vivid to me, and it's still the same thing of like, who is he going to eliminate? Like, this person is obviously crazy. And that's what I say, like, the producers of a lot of these shows, I think in my mind, have to be like psychologists, because they're sitting there and they're like, okay, I know if we put this girl from Ohio in the same room as this girl from Florida, they're gonna hate each other. Like, these are two people who are normal human beings. Like, that's the thing. Like, a lot of these people, if you listen to interviews and stuff, like, of the people who go crazy on these shows, they'll be like, I'm normal. Like, they're not bitchy or crazy people. But when you put a person in a certain situation, and usually in those houses, all they're doing all day is drinking, waiting to talk to Flavor or whoever they're trying to date, and then you got people who like bug your personality. Like, imagine living with 15 of the worst roommates possible. Like,
yeah, I can do that.
And they've picked those people for you. So that's wild to me.
Yeah, and it only takes one bad roommate that I noticed in these shows. Like, it only takes one, and for some reason, this person will not get voted off for anything.
Oh yeah, no, like, I love The Real World for the longest amount of time, and it's just because, like, every season they put a very shitty person in there, and that shitty person's job is to, like, eventually unite everyone else in the house in hate. But there's still, like, one person who kind of likes, but then, like, it'll be like, and I lived with 7 roommates doing a summer internship one time, and wow. I remember we had a moment where a girl was so frustrated that she took, with us not washing dishes, she took every single dish, every single thing, utensil, dish, anything you could use to cook or eat with, she took and put it in her car. And, like, she is the nicest. Listen, this is one of the nicest girls I know. But she did that. And I'm like, this is what happens in these reality TV shows. Because eventually, like, if you live with people who piss you off, they'll make you do something crazy. And I remember calling my mom, like, I'm so mad. Like, I'm cursing up a storm. And I'm like, hey, like, she took my muffin. Like, she took my dishes that I bought. But then at the same time, like, when we talked it out, we sat there and talked it out later on that night. And we all sat there and talked together. And we were kind of like, man, you're just going crazy. Like, because you're just living with people you don't know. In those shows, you can't really leave the house unless you're allowed to. So it's one of those things that, like, if you're forced to be around these people all the time, eventually, like, you're going to do something crazy out of anger that you would never do before.
What kind of car she had?
I don't know what. Listen, all I know is I woke up Saturday morning. We worked in Virginia, and she lived in Virginia, so our house was like an hour away. So it was a whole day. She left for a whole day. Like, took off, didn't answer her phone, and it was one of the things that, like, in any other situation, like, I wouldn't have been pissed off because I don't even cook. So I think I just went downstairs. And, like, I opened up and I was like, man, there's no pans in here. And I wasn't even planning on cooking. It was probably like I was probably going to go out to eat anyway.
Oh, snap.
But, like, the audacity of her just taking everything is what made me mad.
The man said because of the principle.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that, like, we all were sitting there yelling and upset. And I got tons of stories from living with those people, but it's one of those things that, like, we were all normal, nice people. Like, nobody lived in that house was an asshole. But if someone does your pet peeve enough, you go crazy. Like, you lose your mind eventually.
That's hilarious, man. You don't cook. You're like, hey, I dare you.
Like, I had a muffin pan that I probably used twice. And I just remember telling my mom, like, she took this muffin. And it's probably like I got it for $2 at Publix. But, like, she took this pan. And, like, it's just one of those things that, like, and she was mad over us. Like, the thing is, I think that night when we went to sleep, there may have been 3 dishes in the sink. But, like, that was the pushing point for her. It's because, like, she cooked consistently. She meal prepped. So, like, seeing dishes in the sink for her is probably, like, a thing that pissed her off. And we're already working a job at that time. The internship was shitty. So we're all, like, it's one of those things that over that summer, we all lost our minds at one point over something that would never make us angry.
Okay, I got you.
And I, like, that's when I understood reality TV, because I'm like, they're doing little things to piss, like, these are producers, they're smart. They're doing things to piss you off. They're not letting you out of these house. So eventually you're going to snap. Like, one time we were asked to, we had just put chairs out. We were working with kids. We had just put all the chairs out. And one of my supervisors was like, you had to put the chairs up. And I don't know what it was. It was 8:30 in the morning. I went outside. I threw my hat. I cussed for a good 10 minutes outside about this chair thing. And I look back on it. I'm like, this is something that would never, ever piss me off now. But it was just like that summer of living in frustration will make you go crazy. So, like, I couldn't imagine living in a house trying to date one girl with 17 other dudes. And some dude does something I don't like, like, somebody doesn't change the toilet paper. Like, eventually it's going to be something that makes you lose your mind, which is just, it's completely understandable. When you live in the situation, then you go, it's completely understandable.
I'm glad you made it out of that, buddy. We're going to get off the topic, but I just imagine her grabbing everything and putting it in the car. Just like, they keep making trips back and forth.
No, she got everything in one trash, because when she came back, she pulled everything out of her trunk in one trash bag and brought it all inside.
Oh, okay.
And, like, it was, she
like
waited until the end of the conversation. Like we had to have like basically like a house meeting in which our supervisor came and he sat down with all of us. And then at the end when we all come, she's like, okay. And then she went out of the car and popped the trunk and brought in a trash bag full of dishes. And it was like, here are all the dishes. And
Came in looking like the Grinch, huh? Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so all right, to get back, that's still hilarious, man. To get back to TV romances, do you feel like their chemistry has to be more on point because of the duration of episodes?
I think it's a thing of like you can do it. I mean, love is a diverse thing, so you can do it different ways. Like you can have I'm trying to think of one right now, but you can have TV shows where you have two people at the beginning who are very different, who you make it believable that they were. I think the easiest example of this to me is Barney and Robin and How I Met Your Mother. Like there are certain times where like they build throughout the show show that Barney has changed, especially after his relationship with the girl right before Robin. I forgot who that was, but like they show like he's changing his ways, and then for Robin, he changes things. And so when they built to that relationship, it was a lot of the reason why I have a problem with the finale of like him getting back with her is because like they built to that. Like they put in work of like if you go back and watch that show, there are episodes that basically that show does romance well and bad at the same time because there are episodes that are not about romance, but you watch someone take a big step. So you'll watch Barney do something like he's supposed to have a big date that episode and he'll leave the date to go hang out with Robin, and that's how they end the episode. But like you realize like that's a big deal, like from what they build this character as. And so when they make changes like that over time, they make it work, which not make it work, but they make it more organic. And then you can have two people who like obviously from the first episode of the show you're like these two people should date, but then they do the whole will they won't they thing forever because one of them's dating somebody else or whatever, and then they eventually get to come together, which is also a great way of doing it.
Nice. Do you realize that sometimes, well, not even sometimes, this happens like half of the time, the love interests start like dating in real life?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things of like, so Psych, the TV show I love, Sean and Juliet were dating in real life, I think, throughout the whole series.
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah, they ended up breaking up after the series, but they dated for a lot, and I think they dated for a year after the series went off. And it's one of those things that when you hear about it, because you hear about it with movies too, they're like months of shooting with a person, and you're there, and like normally if it's a good TV romance, it's people who have chemistry. Like you can see the way they look at each other, and you can be like, okay, that feels real. Like that feels like these two people like have something there. And I think it's one of those times of like, if you're shooting something like that with a person for long enough, like eventually sparks can fly. Like no matter how good of a person, you know what I'm saying? Because like you're, for the most part, actors are two attractive people. So it's two attractive people playing that they're in love. A lot of TV shows and movies now will, to make your chemistry better, will send you off on retreats and stuff together. Like
really?
Yeah, it's one of those things that I read about that Hallmark for like all of the Christmas movies they shot recently.
Okay.
But like they sent all of those couples away. Like they'll send them away on a vacation for 2 weeks. But it's something that a lot of TV shows and stuff are doing too. Well, they'll send you out for like a week beforehand. They'll be like, hey, go to this Mexican resort for like 7 days because we need you two to feel like you could live together and love each other. And then they come back and they're actually in love.
Yeah, Hallmark should use that for the budget for their movies. But that's not, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I know Blumhouse? Yeah, Blumhouse Studios, they do that too.
Yeah, they did it for
Truth or Dare?
Yeah, Truth or Dare.
Yep.
Which I found super interesting because that movie is the plot wise really bad, but like they seem, for a lot of the scenes they do seem like friends.
Yep.
And that whole Mexican vacation seems real because they were actually shooting that in Mexico when they were on vacation.
Yeah.
So I think like when you make stuff like that happen, then that makes sense when they do fall in love off of screen.
True. I agree. Do you think when it comes to the love story aspect in TV romances, have you ever had one that really blindsided you, or do you think you've always seen it like miles ahead?
Oh man, I had to think about that. Blindsided me. I think that may happen more like in a reality TV show where two people will eventually hook up that have been living in the same house, and you're like, these two people don't make any sense together. But then like they kind of do. Like I think this is a bad example, but Jersey Shore, Snooki hooks up with
Everybody.
She does hook up with everybody, but at one point she hooks up with not Ronnie. I'm forgetting my names. But she hooks up with one of the boys. And
the DJ guy?
No, Pauly D, not Pauly D. It's not the situation. It's the other one. I'm
Oh, I know you're
Completely
talking
blanking on
about.
his
Yeah, I
name.
know you're talking about.
Which is crazy. I'm blanking on his name right now. But like they have a situation where like they both sneak away from the club one night and they hook up and they're kind of doing this thing behind everyone at the house, and you're kind of like, oh, this is not like, especially when it happens on a reality TV show, you're like, oh, these people probably have been like exchanging stuff because you don't see everything all
Yep.
day, and so it's one of those times where I was like, oh, like this is something I wouldn't have expected. And it's funny now because I think reality TV show is funny because like now all of them are basically married. They talked about this on the radio show I listened to, and they were like, yeah, it's kind of weird watching it back with your spouse as your spouse like watches you hook up with all of these people or watches you be in a shitty, like with Ronnie and them, they were in a shitty relationship. And so like a person you're dating later on, if you're dating a reality TV show, can see how shitty you are in a relationship and see those things about you. And like that seems wild to me. I couldn't imagine dating someone and like going through the process of like watching back them being in a relationship with another person like for however many seasons, especially like when you think about The Bachelorette, like those people get engaged or they get married and then get a divorce, or like even like Kim and Kanye, like he has seen like all of her relationships, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it, and then like people like that get married and you're like, I don't understand how you like sat through some of that stuff because it's stuff that you're eventually gonna watch.
I mean, he's seen her porn too, so
Yeah. Yeah. And then I mean it's also something that like those people eventually have to watch, because Nikki said her kids, she talked about it, her boys are getting to the age where they're starting to hear about the show. So I'm like, you're also gonna have to sit there with your child. Like I can imagine like if you're on a reality TV show explaining to your child like, hey, you shouldn't drink, and they're like, you got hammered and got arrested on the beach, Mom. Like I can see like the episode, like there are People magazine articles about this.
I think I could explain to my kids because it'd be simple. It's like all that bought this house, so I think I would just like cut it like, yeah, all right. If you don't like this food we eat, now we can definitely stop all that. But yeah, man, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and talking about TV romances, man. This was a very interesting topic, man. Is there anything you'd like to say to your fans?
Yeah. If you're seeing this, I'm probably posting this on Instagram. So please follow the PoppinCulture podcast. Also follow, you have an Instagram, right? Follow Mike on Instagram. I will post all those links.
Cool. Where can they follow you?
You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. I think all of my social media is now Sup I'm Christian. So SUP I'm Christian. So pretty simple.
Cool. All right, man. Thanks again for coming on the podcast. And you guys have an amazing day.